Hello everybody, welcome back to Joe Patrick on Football. We're going to see some starters playing preseason. How about that? Before we get into the episode, please like and subscribe, as I always ask you to do. And I'm very grateful for those of you who do like and subscribe. And you can literally take this time to do it right now. Click or tap if you're on your phone or whatever. Okay, let's get into the meat of the action today. We're going to get into a mailbag. Just asked for some questions from yesterday, and we have some, so we'll answer those. But there's also some news today from Kevin Stefanski. Before Falcons practice started out here, he did say that starters will play on Friday night when the team plays their first preseason game, and their only preseason game at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And that's exciting, I think, obviously for fans who have tickets and are going to be able to see the game live or even on TV. But I think it's a good decision personally from Kevin Stefanski, not just because, as I've always said, I like to see starters play in preseason because I like to watch good football, and I want to see the best football players out there, of course, for my own personal enjoyment. But I do think that it makes sense for a player like Tua Tagovailoa, who Kevin Stefanski confirmed will be the starting quarterback in that game. Again, assuming nothing, an act of God, something happens before then. But I think it will be good for him, and Kevin Stefanski said to feel, coming into the building, warming up, getting that first series, getting used to the environment. It is a very unique stadium, obviously. Just to feel that. Also, obviously, with a new offense and Tommy Rees calling the plays, who he will call the plays on Friday night, just to kind of get the feeling of having heard him in the helmet, just do all that stuff. It's more about comfort than it is, and kind of getting used to that, than it is about the team, I think, really being less penalized in the first game or anything like that. I don't know if there's anything purely football related that it really affects, but I do think that there are some of these just personal dynamics with players, especially new players to the team and coaches as well, where it can really help them. So great to see, great to hear. I think people are going to receive that very well. So that was probably the biggest news coming out of today. We watched practice, and I'll give you some news and notes from there. Pac-Man Jones was doing plenty of yelling at the referees. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Pac-Man Jones. He was here with Mohamed Sanu. I don't know if they do media together or something. Sorry, the wind's blowing my tripod over here. But I don't know if they do media together or anything. You guys probably know better than I do. But they were here together doing some filming, and I just thought it was really funny that Pac-Man was really getting into the refs for really not calling pass interferences on some of the defensive backs, which is an interesting one. You would think he would be on the other side of that, but that was kind of funny. Ethan Onyanwa, we obviously talked a lot about him yesterday. He was continuing to get some first team work today. He was also repping with the second team as well. They were doing some rotating because I kind of wonder if Jake Matthews is going to be one of those veterans who does not play in this preseason game. There's not really a reason for him to play so much, and so they might use some other tackles, and so they got to get some guys ready. But I think Ethan Onyanwa continues to progress well at that position. Although Jawan Taylor, that's the other big news from today, Jawan Taylor was back in action today. We did see him at practice yesterday, and he was obviously activated off the PUP a couple days ago, but today was the first day where we really saw him practicing with the team. He didn't do any team work, which is customary for players who have been returning from injury under this coaching staff. They basically spend the first couple practices at least just doing individual drills, and then they kind of slowly progress into group and then into team. So I would imagine that we will continue to see him progress, but I don't think that we'll see him play on Friday night because he is just kind of getting back into the flow of action here. But good to see him back, and I think that he will be the team starting right tackle, assuming all goes well there and according to plan. The team practice day was a little bit different. It was much shorter, and they just did some 2-minute drills, some situational football stuff, getting the field goal, special teams on and off the field, the kind of things that you need to prepare for when you're about to go out in there and play a game. But there wasn't anything particularly notable, but I will go through, the first team defense or the primary players on defense, because sometimes you were getting some second team players kind of rotating in. They generally did well against the Jack Strand and Cooper Rush led offenses that they were facing. Didn't really give up much. I think there was a couple drives where they gave up a first down or two, but never gave up a score or anything like that. Tua was never really, I don't know if he actually ever got into the end zone on some of these drives. I have him like on one drive with a couple of completions to Bijan, and then a completion to Olamide Zaccheaus, and then missing Olamide Zaccheaus in the corner of the end zone where Olamide Zaccheaus ran a great little double move route and was wide open. And not wide open, he had a guy kind of trailing him a little bit, and Tua just kind of overthrew it, and Tua was kind of tapping his chest afterwards to Olamide, kind of saying, like, that one was on me. I should have put that one on you a little bit more. And then Tua also had an interception today, but it was on like a PBU that was a 4th and goal from the 2, so it was kind of like a last stand roll out to the left, kind of threw it up there for Drake London as he was approaching the sideline, Tua, and just kind of threw it up into traffic. Honestly, it felt like it's kind of a desperate attempt, basically. But I think it was kind of by design. It was a weird one. I wouldn't count that as like a normal interception. Not that he hasn't thrown some in this training camp, but that's what happened there. Let's see. That's about it. I have Brandon Walton again, just some tackle rotations, et cetera, et cetera. So let's get into the mailbag and answer some of these questions, and then we can get out of here before we enjoy a Friday night football game. How about that? Let's get into them. R. Croft, 2821, asked for the latest on Billy Bowman. I'm glad you asked this because we haven't obviously talked about him, and the reason we haven't talked about him is because he's nowhere close to returning. I think just because of the way that some players have recovered from Achilles injuries, or players who are deemed out for the season are kind of assumed to just be ready the time the next season starts. But I think in this case, it's worth kind of remembering they were middle of the season. I can't remember exactly what week it would have been that he suffered the torn Achilles, but that was always going to set him back into the season, in my opinion. Then also you have to add on top of that the nature of the injury with the position that he plays and what really he needs to excel at his position, which is that short area quickness and that real true athleticism that we saw him display last year. That's just going to take a while to come back. It's one thing if you're a quarterback and your job is to basically stand in the pocket and throw the football, like we obviously saw with Kirk Cousins, and even to that extent he was pretty clearly hampered. So it's going to take longer for Billy Bowman. He's been around, we see him in the weight room. He will come out and kind of be on the field, but he's just kind of in his warm-ups and his jersey and not participating. And so I don't think we'll see him until at least middle of the season, in my opinion, if not later, frankly. I think he will probably play at some point, but just can't imagine that it's anytime soon. Coderum 1242 says, did Brick change up the defense in the wake of the Jalen Walker injury? And it's hard for me to tell exactly and give an exact description of what this team is doing defensively without Jalen Walker now, but I am quite certain that they are experimenting with some different things. We've talked about how I've seen Kendall Daniels and guys like Harold Perkins Jr. lined up on, walked up on the edge, whether they're playing an edge position or they're playing a linebacker position, just walking themselves up there. But also I've seen Brandon Dorlus play on the edge. We know Zach Harrison can play on the edge, and I would not be surprised at all to see some of that as well. Unfortunately, Braylon Trice hasn't really been able to capitalize on this opportunity too much because he's been out with an injury that we don't know exactly what's going on there. It doesn't sound like it's long-term. There's a handful of players, him, Avion Terrell, who we've talked about, Jesse Bates obviously has been a bit of a story. None of these injuries are long-term, but they are obviously keeping these guys out for the time being. And for Braylon Trice, that's tough because this is certainly an opportunity for him to prove to the coaches that he deserves more time on the field. Artie Billy says backwards hat. I did have a backwards hat on yesterday, didn't I? So let's see. Dankabus Kind. That's a hell of a name. Says wants a Jack Strand update. I would say Jack Strand is looking like a UDFA right now. There's obviously a lot of hype around him because he had the prolific college career, and obviously at the beginning of this training camp he was the number one starter basically for this team, but that was never going to be the case. And even he was doing a good job. The players gave him credit for being able to run the operation, but you can see the accuracy. I gotta turn the hat back around because the sun is right in my face. You can see the accuracy is not quite there, and he's just gonna need some developmental time. Probably has some technique things to work out as well in his throw. He's kind of a side armor. He's almost like a baseball throw. So it'll be interesting to see if the coaches do anything there. I think they like him as a long-term project, but that's all he is right now. He's a project. Sam Clont says, tell me something good. Something good? The starters are playing? That's pretty good. How about that? Mr. Artist says, what have you seen from the offensive line? Are they going to continue to live in the outside zone? So this is interesting. They are definitely going to diversify their run game. They've been very open about that. Bill Callahan has talked about it. You can see in the drills they're doing, they are doing different drills than, as Chris Lindstrom said that, they did the same individual period for 6 years or however long Dwayne Ledford was here coaching the offensive line. They're definitely doing different things. I saw them at Lanier, for example, doing some pulling drills where they've got cones that kind of set the path for the players who are going to be pulling. The pulling in general means that we're going to be looking at some more gap scheme style stuff. Having said that, they're not going to totally get away from outside zone. They're still going to run outside zone. And Bill Callahan said, you wouldn't just scrap what your players do best. You have, as a coach, no matter what sport, you're always just adapting to the players you have at your disposal. So they're obviously still well drilled, well versed in the outside zone game, and they're going to continue to do that. But they're going to mix things up, and I think that's really going to help these backs. And I think that it's another reason why I think that this offense is it's almost like tailor-made for Bijan Robinson to have just an incredible year, because I think of what he's going to be able to do in that gap scheme. Plus what he's going to be able to do in the screen game. I think he can just have a ton of production there. So, and we'll wrap it up with, going back to Codrum, I guess, who asked a question earlier, who asked about the cornerback depth. And I think that the cornerback position is probably one of the deeper ones. I feel like the corners have been really good in this camp so far. We were just talking about, one of the reporters in there was asked he has to, as part of a story, has to say, who's been the best player of training camp. And I guess, in my opinion, it's kind of against the expectations that you had for these players. I think you could say either A.J. Terrell or Mike Hughes. And Mike Hughes, we thought we might see him in a position battle, but I think he's just completely locked down that position. He has taken every single first-team corner rep, but I think you still have some pretty talented players behind him with C.J. Henderson, who I think is a pretty good, third corner to have as an outside corner, because he's got that size. Obviously, it's the reason why he was such a high draft pick to begin with. Avion Terrell has really progressed as a rookie to really take hold of that nickel job, even though he is out right now. I think the coaches are really impressed with what he's done. And then I think Darnay Holmes is a guy who has showed up all throughout the summer program, and I think if he's your kind of backup nickel, that's really good. I think they also have some interesting pieces. I guess we're getting outside of the cornerback positions, but guys like Sidney Brown is a really interesting, smart player who can play in some big nickel packages. And DeMarco Hellams has gotten a ton of experience while Jesse Bates has been out. It's been DeMarco Hellams who's been the safety who's been getting all the starting snaps pretty much, next to Xavier Watson. Xavier Watson's been great, had a great camp too. He's just progressing as well. So I think that obviously the secondary is probably the best aspect of this team right now, and obviously the corners play a big part in that, and I think that they're doing pretty well. So that's it for today. We will have a show for you guys. It might not be after Friday's game, but I'll try to get one up over the weekend at some point, and then we'll be back here Monday for a Monday practice, after practice, and then we might be gone a little bit. I mean, maybe we'll do something, but I won't actually be on site in Indianapolis next week for joint practices to cover that. So I'll just kind of be reading the reports like the rest of you. But if there's an interesting topic I think of or want to expound upon, we might get a podcast up. But thank you guys so much for watching. Again, like and subscribe to the video if you haven't already, and we'll talk to you in the next one.